Drama and fireworks on and off the field as we take a look at the round so far. And yes, I'm referring to Kane and the King Wayne Carey. We'll get to that. But first, Kane, the big story has to be Lindsay Thomas from the Port Adelaide Football Club.
Yeah, he was. He was a late inclusion when Todd Marshall withdrew. And this was the incident that he was involved with Scott Selwood. He was reported on the ground for it. Clearly, he's in trouble because he did run past the ball and Scott Selwood went off. He was concussed and didn't take any further part in the game. Look, to what degree it is, was it intentional? Was it careless? That's what they'll have to decide with Michael Christian tomorrow. But look, I thought it was more so careless than intentional. I think it's a 1 to 2 game ban, and I didn't think the force was overly significant.
Yeah, if it goes careless, he's probably looking at 2 weeks. Obviously, if it is deemed intentional, then it's going to be a whole lot more serious. We'll watch this space on that one, and it'll also be interesting to see Joel Selwood defending his brother there, whether or not he's looked at as well. Now, there was a big clash involving Hamish Hartlett and Patrick Dangerfield. This was quite a scary moment.
Yeah, it was a sickening head clash, and you just a reminder of how courageous the players are in modern football. No care for his own safety there, Hamish Hartlett. Now, he was stretched off. There's 18 minutes to go. You can see that in the second quarter. So he spent that time off the ground. He also spent the half time off the ground during the break at half time. But then he re-emerged at the start of the third quarter, which I know you're interested in, Matty.
Yeah, it was stunning to see him come back on the ground. I'm not sure that many expected that. It's interesting that a couple of years ago, concussion protocols were a big story, and we saw Port Adelaide actually fine $20,000, $10,000 of that suspended for a breach of concussion protocols involving Hamish Hartlett. Now, we're not questioning the doctor in this situation, but I wonder whether or not the AFL might raise a query, especially considering $10,000 of that fine is still suspended, and if they were found to breach the protocol again, they'd have to pay that and then some.
Oh, they'll ask the question, I think, but the amount of time spent off the ground, clearly enough time to assess Hamish Hartlett, and you can see that he was in the hands of the doctors there. Dr Fisher is the doctor at Port Adelaide, extremely experienced, and from my point of view, I think Hartlett was more confused about the blood coming from his head, more so than absolutely knocked out cold. So
I think kept on going.
I think in this instance, it appears as though the Port Adelaide medical staff got it right.
All right, so it's been a very, very, very busy night in Adelaide. Chris Scott, fans and coaches have been an issue at this stadium already this season, and we just see Chris Scott here walking down from the coach's box and seemingly having a bit of a verbal stoush with a supporter. Of course, we saw Damien Hardwick back in round 2 in a similar situation, and Chris then raised it with the AFL straight away.
I hope we don't overreact at this, because without knowing what was said, clearly the fan wasn't up in Chris Scott's face, and it wasn't overtly aggressive, and even the policeman, as you're watching the footage, didn't react to anything that was said in the crowd. So I hope there's not an overreaction like there was with Damien Hardwick. What was said to Damien Hardwick was pretty benign, and if you're a supporter who pays money to go to the footy, you have every right to do that, and the overreaction will be that coaches shouldn't be going through the crowd. But look, there's no danger to the coaches at the Adelaide Oval. They're clearly surrounded by security guards and policemen, and he was put in no danger there. So play on.
And that's the problem at the Adelaide Oval. There is no lift. You have to come through the crowd effectively to get out of the coach's box. Over in Perth, what about the Fremantle Dockers, and what about the Western Bulldogs? It was a disastrous night for the Doggies, but Michael Walters, what a star. 5 goals from him. Nat Fyfe chipped in as well with 44 touches. It was a very big night for Fremantle on their home deck.
Just a reminder, Michael Walters, of what an elite small forward he is, and clearly an emotional night there with the passing of Shane Yarran, one of their former players, who clearly had an impact on Michael Walters and the Fremantle Footy Club. So well done to the club for the way that they've handled this. But back to the footy, Walters is elite, and they tried to play him for the midfield in the pre-season, but my opinion is if you're that good at something specialised in AFL, leave them there and let them go to work. And Michael Walters, along with Nat Fyfe, who had 43 possessions, 13 clearances, kicked a goal and did it all, just an unbelievable individual performance from those two.
It was a tight finish at Etihad Stadium, so tight in fact it ended up in a draw between St Kilda and the Greater Western Sydney Giants. The big question that everyone is asking, though, is should Jake Carlisle have been awarded a free kick?
Well, probably the short answer is yes, and I know Alan Richardson believed that he should have. That angle there, you don't quite see it. It's the next angle that we're going to see with that hand coming over the left one of Phil Davis collects him high. So that's a free kick. Jake himself would say, I should have taken the mark in the first place, and there wouldn't have been that issue. It's a simple mark that he dropped there. But to answer your question, yes, it should have been a free kick. The umpire, as you saw, was just blindsided.
Should the Saints see this as a win, you reckon?
It's a good response. I thought it was a competitive response. I loved the way they went about it. Look, their fierce pressure, their tackling, the amount of heat they put the Giants players under, it forced them to do this. Hack, quick kick out of defence and turn the footy over. So their style of play was certainly impressive, and there was a response. They had 16 more inside 50, so you'd think that they let one slip with those sort of numbers. 16 more is a massive number, but they just couldn't get it done late. And I thought the Giants controlled the stoppage, especially in the last quarter.
Does a result like this show the Giants' vulnerability?
Look, I think it just shows the evenness of the competition. Look, I don't have any concerns over the Giants. I think once they get some of their players back, great to see Brett Deledio back in form. Ryan Griffin's playing a role. So, look, they'll get some players back. They'll get Rory Lobb back. And, look, I think the Giants will be okay. But this will be a minor wake-up call for them.
Paddy McCartin has been under scrutiny, no doubt about that, and we've been talking about him here on this show. We saw the best and probably the worst of him.
Yeah, I thought it was more of a positive than a negative for Paddy today. We're seeing some of this stuff. I thought he was on the move more in the forward line. He was more proactive. He was coming up at the footy and he was getting in behind. Yes, he'd like to take that kick again, but he kicked one soon after that. I like this. He's a big man. He's using his big frame and his ability to finish there on the run is a string to his bow that I haven't seen so far this year. And I thought in the big moments when the game was on the line, like this, he put his body over the ball and also kicked a big goal late. We're going to see here a contested mark and then went back and kicked it from 50. So that's the best game that I've seen him play so far this year. And I just wonder, without Josh Bruce there, whether he's relishing the more freedom and space that he's got inside the St Kilda forward line.
All right, so it's a tick for Paddy McCartin. Now, at the MCG, it was a good win for the Eagles on a ground where they do have some issues, but they got the job done. Now, Carlton fans voted pretty loudly that they wanted to see Harry Mackay in the team. And his third game of AFL football, he played pretty well in a losing side.
Oh, he just has to play now, doesn't he? He just has to play for the rest of the season. I think it's about his development. He's going to have some good and he's going to have some bad. But we saw his potential and his ability. He's 200 centimetres. Look at the size of him, and his ability today to finish with that left boot was exceptional. So, look, I hadn't seen a lot of him. Clearly just his third game today. The Blues fans have wanted it. They've expected big things from him, and they'd be pretty buoyed going to sleep tonight knowing that they had a performance like that from a guy who could hold down the forward line for the next 10 years.
Despite the fact that they remain winless, Patrick Cripps, you've nominated as your Saturday star.
Yeah, I thought he was the best man on the ground today, despite the loss from Carlton.
So he gets the 3 Brownlow votes.
He gets the 3 Brownlow votes today. His numbers, if you look through them, extraordinary stuff. 34 disposals. He had 11 tackles. He was tough and even late put his head over the footy, and he was one Carlton player that just did not give up. He's ready to captain the Carlton Footy Club. I expect that to happen at the start of next year. But this is the stuff I like. His breakaway from stoppage, and he's kicking the ball inside 50 a lot more than what he did last year. So certainly the Saturday star today.
Now, don't worry, Eagles fans. We have talked about the losing team first, but we do want to pump up this man, Nic Naitanui. He's back, and we know what he can do above the ground, but what about this effort here?
What I loved about this, if you just watch it closely, it's his sideways movement and his power off that reconstructed knee that he's had. So, this would give the Eagles fans and himself a lot of confidence that he fully believes now that he has really overcome that knee injury, and his ability to change direction and start and stop and dive was just a great indication that he is back. And what about the Eagles sitting on top of the ladder when most, including myself, probably tipped them to drop out of the 8 this year? So they got the Fremantle Footy Club next week in what is going to be one of the great derbies.
Now, yeah, derbies for West Australian fans. So we got it right. Now, let's go back to Friday night because there is still so much to talk about out of this game. It was an upset, that's for sure. The Crows got the win over the Swans, and a really interesting conversation that you were a part of on radio in the aftermath of this with Daniel Talia. He was asked about the comparison between now former Crow, Jake Lever, and Tom Doedee, who is starring for the Crows so far this season.
I think he's done better than Lever. He's intercepting everything back there, and he's fit in that role and really dominating. So, yeah, we're not feeling the loss of Jake at the moment, and Tommy's put his hand up and played some awesome footy in the first 5 weeks.
It was a pretty interesting comment. He didn't miss his former teammate, did he, Daniel Taylor?
No, he didn't. But I thought he spoke with some truth as well. I think Lever right now he's a more accomplished footy player, but this guy's in his 5th game and 11 marks. He's averaging above 20 disposals for the year. I think the one area he'll look to improve on is his ability by foot, which Lever is very good and very composed with the ball. But his courage to do this and just chop in and help out the likes of Daniel Taylor is why they're loving him so much. He also went on to say, Taylor, that they basically double-teamed Buddy Franklin, which we'll look at in a minute, and Tom Doedee was a big part of that.
Yeah, he was. Let's zero in on Buddy Franklin. The Swans rely on him perhaps more so than any other team in the competition relies on a key forward, as we can see from these stats here. They kick it to Franklin 38% of the time.
It's no surprise, really, when you consider how good he is in the season that he's having, but they need to come up with some other options. They're sorely missing Reid and also Tippett at his best. He's not going to be there this year, clearly, but this is some vision of just the Swans having blinkers on Franklin. They needed to go to some different options. This was time and time again, and the Crows knew it was coming. You can see there, he's up against 2, 3, 4 Crows players. That one there on a highlight, that's Isaac Heaney in the middle of the ground, all by himself. But the Swans don't see him because they have those buddy blinkers on. We're going to see it again. We could have played probably 20 or 25 clips of this all night. These are the ones we've selected. But Crows did their homework, and it was a massive reason why they won the game. So Sydney have to come up with something. Whether it's resting sort of Parker in the forward line, Heaney we know can do some damage down there. Perhaps Hanbury goes down there. Kennedy even, who was quiet, has been for the last fortnight. They need to do what Richmond have done and rejuvenate that forward line.
Now, perhaps another reason why they won was the performance of Taylor Walker. You didn't miss him last week here on this show. He played pretty well.
He was very good. I thought he led from the front right from the start. And go back to the criticism last week. You don't back away from that. My criticism wasn't so much about his form. It was about the effort that he was giving as the captain of a big footy club. The effort wasn't there, I didn't think. So that's the way I saw it. But clearly his effort was there on Friday night. The big goal, the big turning point in the game was the one in the third quarter where he just went back from inside the centre square and kicked it long. That's trademark Taylor Walker, and this is a trademark performance and one that he can build his season upon.
It was a good night for Taylor Walker, and the commentators on the 7 Network broadcast were heaping praise.
Now Papley on the 50. He kicks. High ball. Walker, the skipper, in the defensive goal square.
Will be sweet for Tex Walker. And to all those people that knocked him for one bad game, he's stuck it up in BT.
So that was Wayne Carey. Very strong comments, perhaps directed at you, Kane. You then had a few things to say about on Saturday radio. Yeah,
I just thought that the praise was over the top. That was the basic premise of my comments. As I said, Taylor had an exceptional game and certainly needed to be recognised for the Leaders game that he played. But I just thought Wayne in particular was quite over the top with his continued praise right from before the ball was even bounced right through. Now, that was one clip. We probably could have played 20 more pieces of praise from Carey towards Tex, and as I said, it was just a little bit over the top. So
from one radio box to the other, Wayne Carey got word of those comments from you, and this is what he had to say on Triple M.
I will ask Kane this. Being a shock jock in this industry as a former player has a limited time, and right now his vendetta against Tex Walker is not looking very favourable on him because he got made look like a fool last night.
Do you have a vendetta against Taylor Walker?
No, look, we've had a bit of back and forth, and it's a part of it has been a bit of fun. Look, I judged him harshly, but my comments were in no way personal towards Wayne Carey, and he's got every right to give me a whack back after I questioned some of his commentary. So, look, I just think I call it as I see it. I don't think anything that I said was shocking.
Are you a shock jock?
Or a shock jock, as I said. Wasn't personal. I just made the comment on radio and didn't think that it would get picked up like it has. There you go. Storm in a teacup, apparently, according to Kane. Hey, does he get in your core team of the week? Tex? Yeah. Yeah, I think he's in there at the moment. Righto. So I've got him in the forward pocket at the moment. Clearly a good performance. But forwards have been dominating, so still a fair bit to play out over the weekend. But right now, Crows fans who are into me and saying that I'm hard on me, there's a fair chance he'll be in there.
All right, let's take a look at the ladder as we continue here on the round so far. Of course, still with 4 games to play. Good to see the West Coast Eagles right up at the top there. Geelong making an impact now off the back of that result. Obviously, plenty of games still to come, and Carlton remains winless at the bottom of the table there, with Brisbane with a game in hand, and we'll see what they can do as we take a look, Kane, at the rest of the round.
Yeah, let's do that. There's some huge games coming up, of course. We'll get them up. North Melbourne taking on Hawthorn. This one could go either way. Hawthorn in terrific form, but they got some big outs. And then the Q clash, Brisbane up against Gold Coast. Brisbane woeful last week, just kicking 17 points. Hope there's a response there. And Anzac Eve sees Melbourne up against the reigning premiers. And then the big one Wednesday, 2 sides coming off a big win. Who do you tip there? Probably most people favouring Collingwood. I got a feeling Essendon could cause a slight upset.
And what about Melbourne-Richmond? You tip there?
Oh, Richmond, go the form side on the back of what Melbourne produced last week. But on the back of the results so far, toss a coin, Matty.
Yeah, that's the problem, isn't it? One more thing before we go. Is this worth a 50-metre penalty? It's not every day you see a player... Well, you often see a player without their boot, but this is what Jeremy Cameron did to Blake Acre's boot. He threw it away and he cost his team a 50.
Love it, love it. Love a bit of cheekiness. Didn't think it was probably worth a 50. Maybe just a little bit of a warning, but good to see the players are still having some fun.
Thank you, Kane. It's been a big show, that is for sure. Thank you for watching the round so far.